You started this talk by thanking Secretary Linda McMahon for releasing the federal funding. She was holding it hostage. Why did you thank someone who was holding education funding hostage?
Well, it's like all the people, thanking the governor for a bridge that he didn't build that was his proposal. So it's actually very similar, Marshall, in many ways.
You asked her one tough question at the beginning was, can you communicate with us before you do something like this again? And she said no.
That was a little bit worrisome because here's the problem with this, right? We know that there's going to be changes in what the federal government does and what they spend more money on or less money on. The reason that this was so problematic is it was past 11th hour. School districts were literally have teachers that were scheduled to be funded through these funding streams, and until today, it was very uncertain they were even going to get that funding. So what do you even tell kids who rely on that after-school program? What do you tell teachers? Do you report to work? I mean, it's that time of year. What I asked her was, can you figure this out more ahead of time and communicate better with us? She wasn't able to commit. So that was worrisome because I don't want to be in the same situation next year where just as the school year is beginning, we don't even know what funds are coming.
Well, don't you have to prepare that way now, given that answer?
Prepare for chaos? I mean, look, I think we've learned that in a number of ways with this administration. It's very unpredictable. Even when actions are taken, overturned by the courts 2 weeks later, it's really strengthened our state efforts around contingency planning. We're always thinking whether it's fire or anything else. If this funding happens, what do we do? If it doesn't happen, what do we do? As the governor, it would be far more productive to have that knowledge ahead of time, whichever it was. If we weren't getting funding, I might say I wish we had it, but at least we knew we weren't going to get it. And not knowing, you don't know whether to replicate that capacity on the state side, which then is wasteful if the federal government money comes. So it's a very frustrating position to be in, and it would be a major area of improvement for the Trump administration that I hope they work on.
Her department may withhold money from school districts if they don't sign a policy saying they're not going to do DEI. First question to this is, do you support school districts that want DEI policies?
Well, I don't think she said that today. I mean, it's my understanding, and again, I just saw a press release and we talked to her, that this title funding that had been held back has been released to the school districts. Now, separately, this administration is waging a war on DEI. I think diversity and inclusion, those are great things. Now, do bad things happen under that name? I'm sure they do. They happen under any name. But by and large, it means making sure that our schools are a welcoming place for everybody, no matter your background, your race, who you are. And that's really what we want in Colorado, and I sure hope it's what we want across the United States.
If they follow through with that threat, though, that if school districts don't sign this policy, you're not going to get certain federal funding, is the state prepared to backfill missing federal money there?
Well, I don't, again, I think what we'd want to see operationally is what is this DEI that they don't like? They called it something different a couple of years ago. What was that word they used for the stuff that they didn't like that was, now it's DEI? Do you remember? No? No, it was woke. No, it was something else. Critical race theory. Okay. A couple years ago, they kind of went after what I think they're calling DEI. They said critical race theory we don't like. And I think that's still what they don't like. There's certain aspects of it where if anything, in DEI makes anybody feel excluded just because they're a member of the majority, that's wrong. It's about including everybody. So, I mean, is there a legitimate discussion to be had? Sure, but should you shut down programs that fundamentally are about making sure marginalized students from low-income households or disadvantaged families aren't welcome in and able to participate? I would oppose shutting down those efforts to include everybody.
All right, just a couple more questions. This requires a bit of your congressman hat. Do you know Recision?
Do I know what Recision is? Of course.
Yeah. So I was reading something on the way down that there is a possible threat to education funding with Recision, that if the request from the president comes after August 15th, it's 45 days, would overlap the end of the budget year. So Congress wouldn't have to do anything and the money would just disappear. You had an opportunity to talk to her about money like that. Why not bring it up? And are you still worried that by end of September, you still may have to find money that the federal government is not going to give to Colorado?
Well, I would be happy to ask her that question, and so I'm as a follow-up to this, I'll certainly put that together and say what is going on with that. We had been imminently worried about the funds that were being frozen and not given that were due months ago. that are already spent. But if there are other federal funds that we are counting on for our schools and our classrooms that people are already hired on, that we make sure the class size is smaller based on, I certainly want to and plan to follow up with the Secretary to see what's happening with those.
Have you been told a dollar amount that the state could fund if you had to call a special session for education? Like
sorry,
what the
say that
maximum, have you been told a dollar amount from your budget people? Here's the maximum the state could handle if they had to.
I want to be clear, a special session, if there is one, is about cuts, not new expenditures. Why are there cuts? Because of the big bad bill or big beautiful bill, whatever you call it, that big bill that passed leaves a gaping hole in the budget of every state because of primarily the health care cutbacks, throwing people off of Medicaid, increasing insurance rates for premiums for people on the exchange, rural hospital support. These are the holes that the state will be trying to fill, but we start with hundreds of millions of dollars in the hole because of those federal changes. So that's what this session would be about. How do we plug that hole, not how do we find additional things to spend money on. The biggest part of that hole, Marshall, and you should do kind of a story on this, is Colorado is one of the states that has conforming tax changes, meaning when the federal government changes something, it automatically changes in the state unless we previously decoupled, which we rarely do and only have done in a few areas. So the tax changes alone in that bill cost the state between $600 and $800 million in revenue that we will get less each year.
That sounds really complicated. So
it does. That's why you need to do one of your explainers,
okay,
on that, because I can't describe. But you need to do Mark Ferrandino. Mark, yeah. We'll put Mark on camera if you want, or behind scenes. Okay. But it's really important why we're losing so much money, and not us alone. Most states, but yeah.
We'll need help on that.
Not every state is coupled. Some states, they have their own state tax code, separate federal one. Now that's inconvenient for human beings because it means you basically have to file two totally different state taxes. In our state, what's great is you only have to do it once, and your federal one is basically good for the state. There's a few things you can do differently, but not every state is coupled. Many states are. I think half the states are coupled, like us.
Colorado's north though too,
yeah.
It's simultaneous.
Yeah, we're simultaneously coupled. Yes.
So going back one question, when are you calling the special session?
Well, again, right now we're figuring out what the state would benefit from doing earlier rather than later, right? The legislature comes in January. So if things can wait to January, they can wait till January. However, the federal fiscal year starts October 1st. So if there are changes to be made, and this is what we're analyzing, that benefit the state of Colorado, that should be made before October 1st, we would need to come in before that to make those changes.
My other pocket question that I could always ask is, when are you announcing you're running for president?
Oh, when are you announcing, Marshall? Okay.